What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So today I want to expand on a video that I did the other day talking about like how to improve your PvE, your buffs and everything. So what I wanted to actually show you was basically a lineup of all the buffs that I use and talk about it, whether you're a new player, returning player, or someone just trying to do different things. I'm going to try to explain what all the AP caps and stuff do, and also show you like what I would use if I was overcapped, if I wasn't overcapped, and like you see all this and you're probably like, oh, that's a lot of things I need to remember. It's actually not that bad, but I'll try to explain it in a simpler form, and hopefully this helps all of you guys. So with that said, I'll leave a link in the description to the video that I talked about, where it's just like general tips to like helpful that are used every day. But what I wanted to talk about today was everything else. So once again, let's talk about all of the monster zones and everything. So just like a quick recap of what happens. So by default, you're gonna see your stats and it's gonna look something like this, right? What you want to kind of filter out is the total stats. I would recommend starting it with no species and then going when you find a grind spot you like, right? And then you'll find, let's say, I don't know, let's go pick something in Kama Sylvia, right? So then these are obviously Kama Sylvian monsters. Then you filter out filter the extra damage, and then you go from there. So anyway, with that said, what you're gonna want to look for is basically, is your number green versus red? Red means you're not overcapped. Green is good. And do you meet the effective limit, right? Okay, so with that said, what should you do in a lot of situations? Let's go over every buff that I use. This is for PvE, by the way. So first of all, as I talked about, you would be using a simple cron meal. This is generally good because it gives 30 AP against monsters, and then a bunch of extra special attack damage. Obviously, back attack, crits, air attacks, so on, or back and crit mostly, and then your elixirs and everything will cover the rest. So simple cron meal is what you'd be using first. Let's say, let's just give it a, let's look at 1700. This is my AP, no species, right? And we have no buffs on. So it's actually very important because buffs, believe it or not, do give a lot of extra stats, and it's something that you should consider. So then after that, we're at 1730, and let's say your goal is to grind. Let's use a spot that's, I don't meet the requirements for the, like, without species and everything. So let's say your number is red, you're trying to get more stats, whether it's AP or DP. Obviously, gear will help you as well. So one thing, if you are undercapped, this is a cheap option as well. Nowadays, it's cheap anyway. So what you're going to want to do is look at species damage. So let's say our goal is to get Edonia, right? So we'd filter that one. And then if in case you are overcapped, this is generally what I use. But depending on where you're grinding, do you need an extra like CC resistance or anything? If you need more AP and then everything else, you swap to that. And then it's mostly just for, if you are overcapped, you're trading off a little bit of damage for attack speed and then more defensives. If you are not, then you want to go more damage and everything. So, and then this is for resistances. So anyway, we were talking about how to go about hitting, like 1890 and everything, right? So after that, when you pop your alchemy stone, whether you have a Vels or not, that will give you the +8. And then, so this is where things get a little bit funny for newer players who might get confused, right? So if you were to be overcapped, like, the number is green, you would be using deep seas because those give more back, down, and air, and then slight AP. So once you're overcapped in a spot, you're going to be using deep seas simply because special attack damage is worth more than your damage when you're overcapped. So like your AP is less relevant. If you are under the cap of something, you want to use courage because it will give you more AP towards the cap. So once you're past the effective limit, you're basically not doing anything else anymore. So after that, species damage, I would say for most people, target openings or vicious shadows are generally the best ones to go for, simply because, well, it's just overall usage is better. At the end of the day, you want to get both of them. Vicious shadows is slightly more damage if you are doing more back attacks. So I think the calculation that I saw on the spreadsheet somewhere, or someone posted like an informative discussion about it, was as long as you're doing like 60% back attacks, vicious shadows will be better. Otherwise, if you're not locked in, you're just like watching a video on the side grinding, target openings will probably just be generally more useful. Either way, you want to get them both at the end. Otherwise, if you are not hitting the cap at a certain spot, Adonia, or like species damage itself, in my case, Adonia, so that's our number. And then that'll just give you, without amplified, is plus 15 from the light stones itself, and then plus 15 from the effect. So it's like plus 30, and then amplify it is like a plus 6 more. So that's actually really good. So yeah, you know how we went from like, what was it? I guess if we don't take that, we're trying to meet the cap from 1700, then food. Another thing, so you would obviously, I don't really want to pop the perfumes and harmonies now, but you're just gonna look at it. So like, let's say we're doing Adonia, then it's a plus 13 for AP, and then plus 17 for the species, plus 30, and then all the other extra, stats like the defensives and, all special attack damage, that actually adds up. So you're probably wondering, how do you get all these numbers? Back in the day, we used to use blue elixirs. So this is what it would look like. And you see how all these blue elixirs right here? These are essentially all these stats from all the elixirs combined into a harmony. And back in the day, we'd have to use the fairies continuous care, and basically have these auto pop every 15 minutes. Nowadays, for all you new players, this is actually good. We have harmonies, and that's it. So you never have to really think about it. It's just all in one. So that'll give you another plus 30 plus other, nice stats as well. And then another 20 or 10 plus specials, depending on which one you're at, where you're grinding. And then, of course, we have the furniture buff, the blessing of the Mystic Beast. You guys know how I feel about that. I'm not really going to talk about that again, just because like there's cheaper alternatives. But anyway, furniture buff, at least plus 15 AP, something worth getting. So if you look at elixirs going on an hour, it's like plus 30, plus 20, and then another 10. So that's like 65 AP alone from all that one. So then that's actually a huge bonus. That would put me way above the cap. And then here are some extra things for, people that actually have them. Things like the traditional tea snacks that are like plus 5 to AP. You're mostly using it for the item drop rate, 100% for 3 hours. That's more important. But for everyone else who, like this is why Royal Workshops, they're pretty nice. So every now and then, as long as you have them going, sometimes you'll get like, the traditional thing, or this one gives you extra bonus stats if you want to get it. They're kind of expensive, and most of the time, people aren't running them just because of how rare they are. And if you're like a life skiller, you get these kind of equivalents and everything. But anyway, this is a plus 3 and plus 5. You're mostly using it for the item drop rate. And for all the like higher end players, you would be using the Perfume of Envy and Tenacity. They're essentially the same thing, but with extra, another plus 5 AP. And then, this one gives more HP, so like higher survivability realistically. So yeah, these are more for the end games, but essentially the same thing. These are just like the entry level version. Honestly, I use still the regular perfumes because these are expensive, and most of the time you won't need to be using these. So with that said, other ways to get extra AP, obviously castle buff if you're a PvPer, and node war buff and all that stuff. If someone has the, the blessing from the Calamity 8 to 10 bosses, that obviously helps. So yeah, by default, gear matters, but then buffs actually add a huge percentage of your stats as well. So I just wanted to cover all of that as well. So Other than that, I just want to, I guess, show you, you know, how I set up my fairy and continuous care. So this one is just this is my Zephyros one. So mostly because I'm not overcapped, I'd be using the Adonia and then Envies. And then if you wanted to, Blessing of Mystic Beast and all the other, you know, all the other goodies as well. But realistically, if I were you, here's what I'd recommend. Obviously, turn on your bell. That's a good one. And then, you know, your food buffs that we just talked about. Crystals are, you know, pretty important depending on what you want. So I have a video of this one. I might do an update at some point, but nothing really changed. But I guess we'll talk about that after the Calpheon ball if something does. For most people, if you are overcapped in a spot, this is your go-to. You're trading off a little bit of damage for the Olukas, which is attack cast speed. Allows you to, you know, obviously attack faster. And then more defensives. If you need full damage, this is the maximum damage you can get because you're using Maclods with the effect and everything. So max damage. And then if you need a specific type of CC resistance, Adamantine for knockdown, Fighting Spirit for knockback, and Giants for stun resist. How do you know what you need? Generally, when you look at a spot, like no matter what grind spot you're at, it'll tell you, like, for example, Ethereum is stun stiffness, knockback floating, all that's, you know, everything else is knockdown. You'll figure it out just based on what grind spot you're at. Aside from that, that's pretty much it. There's not much else to talk about. I would say if you're not meeting the cap, species damage will always be the way. Once you are meeting the caps for the spot, vicious shadows and target openings. Depends on the spot. Like, for example, some spots just are really hard to get back attacks, and then you want to use target openings for. And some spots, vicious shadows will generally be better. But anyway, really just depends. You'll figure that out over time. That's why we have the all-in-one preset. And probably the way I'd recommend setting it up is, like, obviously Succession, Awakening, and then one for, you know, what I would really swap around is artifacts, artifacts and crystals. Everything else, we'll talk about the Reforge, I guess, real quick while I'm at it. Where is it? Here. So this is basically my default. If I was, well, I use this for Succession. Crit rate, back attack, crit damage, all AP, Black Spirit recovery. I think this is the best setup for literally every single class for PvE. And then if you're PvP, obviously you switch things around, you know, probably extra damage reduction, more accuracy. You play around with PvP, those really do change. But aside from that, most of the time, I would say this is probably the go-to for literally every class. Maximum damage output, and Black Spirit Rage is actually pretty good, believe it or not. So anyway, yeah, but aside from that, I think that's pretty much all the buffs you can get. If you get some random, like, event items that give you extra stats as well, like, you know, I don't know. Sometimes they give you, like, various event things that just give extra AP and everything. Always use those. But those are just, like, the beginner basic tips that I can give you to improve your ultimate damage output. And obviously the best thing you could do is probably learn your class, get the proper add-ons and everything. Make sure to cycle these out, like, try to keep these up as close to 100% at a time every time. And yeah, just play around with them. Every class will do something different, and good luck. So with that said, hopefully you guys get a lot of trash and improve your grind on the day. So yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys later. Peace.